Here we go. All right, welcome everyone to the first online Queensland meeting, online only Queensland meeting. Can you actually see the group chat here, or is that hidden? Can you only see the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got it off the side.
Okay, I was just wondering if it was obscuring things. Okay. All right, so just tonight we're going to do the general meeting. We're going to hear from Chris Nash, the National Chairman. He's going to give us a rundown on some stuff that's been happening with AEVA across the country. I'm going to have a quick report of stuff that's happened over the last year. We'll hear from Les and Simone. We'll have the Queensland branch election. We'll do some special business where you can raise questions about stuff that you'd like to see happen over the next year. I'll give you a rundown on a bit of the EV infrastructure that's come in since the last meeting. Nathan will give an update about the latest EV stuff, and then we'll open the floor to anyone who wants to ask questions at the end. Righto, Chris, it's all yours.
Lovely. Thanks, John. So I'll just share my screen. And I'll just make that a PowerPoint. Okay, is that coming through all right for everyone?
Yep, looks good.
Yep. Oh, good. Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks, John, and thanks for the opportunity to speak at the meeting. So today, effectively, I'm just going to have a bit of a chat about what's happened with the body nationally over the last 12 months, what we've been looking at, what we're dealing with. And then one of the other questions that came up in one of the states, Tasmania it was, they were looking for an outlook on where I thought we might be at in 5 years' time and what the National Executive are thinking. So I've also put a little piece in about that. So I'm fairly open. We're not a massive group, so if you want to stop at any point and ask questions, just yell out. Otherwise, I've got a questions section at the end if you want to wait to the end. So I'm happy to do it, whatever suits you. Right, so let me tell you about what's going on nationally at the moment. So everyone, I assume, would be aware of the new website. Finally up and running after quite a bit of time of trying to get it together. We managed to get it up and going. I hope everyone's had a good look around there. There's a whole stack of functionality that we're learning about with the new website, but that is now the central point for our communications. It's delivering our emails. It's giving us options to get newsletters out and other bits and pieces. You can see all our things on there, and I'd encourage everyone to get on there. We are still working our way through making sure that it is updated and it is correct. So if there is anything that you see there that you think might be out of date or has changed or was a spelling mistake or anything of that nature, please yell out. You can get in touch with Christopher Walkenden down in Tasmania, Chris Jones, National Secretary in WA Chair, or Rob Hills. But you'll see contact details for them on there. The website does everything. You can renew your memberships, and for the upcoming AGM, we had confirmation through today that it will actually also be processing the tickets. Sorry, the upcoming conference, it'll be processing the tickets. So that's the new website. Some of you would be aware of the legal structure changes that we're considering at the moment. There's been a heap of work going on with that at the second. The very quick summary is that we've sort of outgrown our current legal structure. We are currently an incorporated association that is incorporated in Victoria, and under the particular rules around incorporation in Victoria, which changed in 2012, in theory, you're not meant to be operating on a national basis. And so what a number of bodies in our position have done is change their structure to a company limited by guarantee. That process we're working through to see how that's going to look for us, and there'll be more to come on that, where we'll be sending letters out and explaining the details of that. I think, John, did you send out the explanation that we got from the lawyers to the membership on that particular piece, that letter that we had?
To the committee, at the minimum.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, so a number of the committee would have seen the details there. So anyway, there's a few changes that need to go on to protect the association, protect the association's assets, and then get us structurally set up so that we can press forward with a few of the things that we're looking at the moment. We've launched the Idle Off project, which I know Queensland branch know all about, because you've got Nathan presenting regularly, and obviously Nathan did a great presentation about it a couple of months ago, so I won't go over that again, but to say that it's getting some great support from around the country, and I'd encourage everyone to look at the Idle Off website, idleoff.com.au. The conference has moved to a completely online structure. It will be on the 27th of November. At this stage, it's looking very exciting already. We've got over 40 speakers. It's in 3 streams. We have speakers such as Tim Flannery from the Climate Council, Robert Llewellyn from Fully Charged. We have a speaker from the Better New Zealand Trust, who are effectively us in New Zealand. Speaker from the Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association, the Scottish Electric Vehicle Association, the Norwegian Electric Vehicle Association. So it's really looking good. We've got the EVC speaking in there, so very excited about what's going on there. The pricing is set effectively as low as we thought we could do it. So members is going to be, don't quote me on this, but I think members are $40. Is that what I said last time, John, in the States meeting?
Yeah, I believe it was. Yep.
Yeah, $40. If it's not 40, it'll be 50, but $40 for members. The concession $25, and non-members is $90. Obviously, trying to attract non-members to become members so that they get the whole thing together. So very exciting. A full-day conference set up in those 3 streams on the 27th of November. Would encourage everyone to get along and have a look at that. Tickets will be out hopefully by the start of October. Some finishing touches being put on the website for that, and that will be up and running hopefully around the 25th of September. You would have noticed that the newsletter has progressed from over the recent years from a 10-page publication to a 50-page publication. There's been a stack of work go into that, and we appreciate everyone's input into that. For those that are sending articles and bits and pieces, those who haven't, please feel free to send some stuff into our newsletter editor. Always happy to get new things. We have a plan in the works to bring that into a magazine format, and we're working through that at the moment. The EV fact sheets to be found on the website. So a number of those have been updated. If you're looking for information because you're considering buying an EV, alternately, you're talking to people who are considering buying an EV, the EV fact sheets are a fantastic impartial source of information to give people a real comparison between the different vehicles on a fairly basic structure. So would encourage everyone to have a bit of a look at those. The strategic plan was due to be released earlier this year. Then we run into a little thing called COVID-19. So we've held that back, and due to some of the things that we've learned out of COVID, there will be some minor changes to the strategic plan, and hopefully we'll be putting that out and about in and around the conference time. Creation of the AEVA Awards, which originally was an idea thought up in Queensland and has then sort of progressed around. That was again going to be at the conference in Melbourne. Due to that being swapped onto an online conference, that now will be, the inaugural awards will now be in Adelaide next year in 2021, assuming that that's going to be a face-to-face conference and we don't have a second or a third or a fourth wave, whatever we're up to by that stage. It's something that everyone will be involved in, so there will be some voting for members to work out some of the awards, and there's awards on a whole range of things, cars and bikes and trucks and all sorts of bits and pieces, different projects that are being run around the place. So keep your eyes out for that next year when it comes around. Numerous submissions to government on a whole range of issues. You can see a number of those on the website. I won't go into all of them now, but there are plenty there to have a look at. We've been looking at a memorandum of understanding with the Renew organisation. They've gone through some fairly big changes just recently. And the upshot of that has actually meant that down in Victoria, we've now created a Geelong sub-branch. So we now have a Ballarat sub-branch and a Geelong sub-branch, something that we're very keen to see happen all around the country, is the sub-branch idea. But we've been talking to Renew about how we might be able to work closer together and potentially have some sort of joint membership of the two organisations. That was flying along, and then they went through a fairly radical change within their management, and numerous members of their senior management team were no longer. So it's slowed down a little bit at this stage. We've had some great discussions with the Electrical Trades Union. We were due to be speaking at their national conference back in June. But again, that got scarpered by the virus. So we're hopeful that as things start to open up again, then their national office is here in Melbourne. So once we're open up again, that we'll be able to get ourselves started up and get that running again. As no doubt John's been telling you, we've been having the States meeting monthly, and that's been a fantastic initiative. It's been able to give us a lot more communication, to share ideas and get things moving across the country, especially where we've got various activities going on around the country that we wouldn't necessarily hear about on a week-to-week basis. It's been great for the various participants to share what activities are happening. So, the executive's view in 5 years' time, and some of you might have seen this stuff through the strategic plan when it was presented in Sydney, but we believe that we need to be heading towards that 10,000 member mark. One of the reasons for considering the legal structure changes is that as we stand at the moment, the types of memberships that we can put together are all listed in the Constitution. And to create new memberships, we at this point would have to make a constitutional change each time we wanted to do that. When we go through the legal changes, we will actually be able to create new memberships without running a special general meeting, and we can effectively get that done more nimbly, which we believe will give us a much better opportunity to increase the membership from a broader base of people, including schools joining us, including various activity groups such as the Formula SAE people, or maybe the Electrical Trades Union members, or so on and so forth. We'd be looking to have representation at least 100 expos and shows annually. We do quite a lot at the moment as a collective, but we'd like to really get a few of those more coordinated in terms of happening in each state, but on a national basis. We'd love to be presenting to over 200 schools annually and educating the next wave of EV drivers. Electricana run annually in every branch. There's a really strong view that the Electricana can actually be the major activity for each state on an annual basis, and that if that particular state happens to be running the National Expo in that year, then the National Expo would take over as the main activity. But whilst the Expo is going to other states, that every state can jump in and really make that happen with lots and lots of test drives. The magazine, a bit quick. The magazine, as I mentioned earlier. The awards, as I also mentioned earlier, some formal relationships with various organisations such as the RACs and ETUs of the world. We're looking to have a team of EV ambassadors, and all of the AGMs that I've been speaking at, I've been asking for ideas on the EV ambassadors. So effectively a group of people that would be able to get on as our ambassadors that we can use to generate press about whatever issues we might be looking to talk about, to help us draw attention to activities that we're doing, people that have a profile that we can put out in front and start to bring the public along for the ride and make sure that they're connected to what's going on. And then the final thing is a webinar series monthly, and that's one of the things that's definitely come out of this this COVID period, is that it's very clear and led by the Queensland branch in terms of the live streaming that from a national perspective we can comfortably be putting out a webinar series on a monthly basis that people can tune into. Away from the branch meetings. Some people might be able to use it as branch meetings depending on when it's scheduled, but definitely something that we will look to be pushing forward in terms of communication for members. Questions? Fire away, and don't everyone go at once.
Thanks, Chris. That was pretty good. We also had an initiative about 2030.
Yep, I haven't written that up, and I won't be releasing that till later. In
Future
the
project.
Yes.
Project.
Yeah.
I just have one question. I don't know. We might have covered it before. Maybe I'm not the greatest listener, but the driving around Victoria, is that the portion?
The AEVA tour? Yeah. So obviously that's had to move due to the restrictions. I guess you're all very aware the restrictions have been a lot tougher in Victoria than they have been anywhere else in the country. So the hope that the EVCO tour will move from what was going to be October, the test drive possibly will get up and going in December, and if that occurs, then it's likely that we'll be looking at a February-March tour.
Okay. Does anyone got a question?
Hey Chris, it's Gary here. Just
hey,
a
Gary.
question on the formal relationships.
Yes.
You mentioned electrical trade unions, motoring clubs,
Yep.
Renew Group and such. How about
Yep.
the solar industry? I realise they get busy at times, depending on policies and whatever, but it's always struck me about the synergy. If we've got ETU there, which I imagine electric vehicles, possibly charging infrastructure, things like that. How about the solar industry? I mean, there's so much synergy there.
Yeah, no, it's a really good thought, Gary. Haven't got that far into it at this stage. So I've got a number of conversations I've got to tie off at this point. But the solar people are definitely someone that we can get involved with and have a chat with. And the bigger voice that we have, the more presence that we have as people see us, they will naturally gravitate to us as well, because a few of these have actually come to us rather than us just going to them.
Yeah, yeah. Because
So
I always remember, like in the early days, so many solar businesses, operators, they probably were early into the Tesla purchase. And of course, they always had destination charges at the back of the shop. Yeah.
Well, connection with Renew and, as you mentioned, the ETU is almost a direct connection into solar anyway. But yeah, for sure, it's definitely something that that we can explore. Do you have any particular contacts, Gary, in that area?
I suppose only other than our own choice of installer here, who we had a fair bit of business, pushed his way through people we recommend to him and whatever. So yeah, I guess I do have a local contact, in Brisbane here. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I don't know the broader groups involved in solar. I certainly know a number of companies, because I'm the same as you. I've got a 10 kilowatt system sitting on the roof and doing all that sort of stuff. And I reckon there'd be a stack of us here who do. So
I wonder if there's an opportunity for those organisations who are really keen to get involved and tie up to have a corporate membership of AEVA at an individual installer level, but trying to get those group engagements at a higher level, whether that be someone like Renew or your union, or maybe there's an industry body or a peak body of solar organisations, and try and have those MOU type approaches at the higher level, but encourage those corporate engagements like we at Movement have done.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair enough, Nathan. Yeah. Thank you for that.
I've got another question, Chris. Just
fire away.
I'll paraphrase it, but Gav's asking, with our structure, does it allow for, as a classified business, to conduct meetings under COVID safe event checklist, where we have still have a live meeting, a meeting at the hall with the 4 square metre rule in Queensland? Because currently...
So this is a question under the current structure?
Yeah. Do you know if it makes any difference? I seem to think that the way it was, the regulations I read, that you weren't allowed to have meetings over 10 unless you were a business with COVID safe event checklists. But I don't think we're a business. Are we a business? Or I'm not really sure about that sort of thing.
As we stand at the moment, we're technically not a business. But again, that depends whether you're talking to ASIC, the tax department, Corporate Affairs Victoria, or whoever, because they've all got their own definition of what a business and what business is. So, look, I would follow your local guidelines, but I would be very conservative around what you do. I wouldn't push the boundaries too far, because I'm very aware from some not-for-profits here in Victoria that have been operating under what are completely appropriate circumstances, that have had the police called in by neighbouring residents and so on and so forth, on numerous occasions. So, which doesn't really make everything particularly comfortable. And I don't know how far you guys are going up there in Queensland with.
We're going pretty good. We're having we're having under 10 every day, and all of them are generally already well known. There's virtually no community transmission. So.
Yeah. Have the police been out and about, finding people and doing all that sort of stuff?
I think they've been patrolling the border more than.
Right. Okay. Because
down
here, the police have been very prevalent in following up people on. Because
you're still able to go to pubs, clubs, and all that type of stuff, because they're running the COVID safe. Because they're businesses, they're running the thing, and you can have, and there's been markets on and stuff like that, and people unsure about whether they should be doing that or not. Just the other follow up to that was: is there a timeline or date for the transfer to the company?
Yeah, it was going to be for the AGM. We were going to bring it all originally to the AGM, all ready to go. We've taken it a little bit more slowly because we've had to go through the process of thinking about what the new constitution needs to have in it. And that's something that we then want to discuss with the states. So, we were on target, but that's sort of slowed up a bit. So it'll most likely, hopefully, be later in the year.
And just remind me, is the AGM going to follow the 27th of November when we have the
AGM's on the 3rd of October.
Still the 3rd?
The AGM has remained on the same day. Because we don't have to connect now that the conference is online, we don't have to connect the two. They're not required to be at the same time.
Okay.
So, everyone should have got a notice about the AGM today, I think.
Yeah, Chris.
DJ sent something around.
Yeah. Nathan's got a question.
Quick question. Thanks, Chris. So the way I see AEVA is that it's the peak body for EV consumers as a consumer group in Australia, and there's a lot of weight and there's a lot of strength behind that. You could argue that TOCA is a similar level, but it's nowhere near as broad. But both of those organisations are the voice of the customer, the voice of the user of an EV in Australia. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I would just wanted to ask a question about is how you're going to manage that. Maintaining the strength and the value of that particular mantle when getting involved with RACs and other organisations who typically try to hold that mantle.
Yep. So look, for some of them, Nathan, I'm already aware of the fact that it won't work at all. I'm told that South Australia, for example, is not one that we're going to find a lot of support with. However, there are some of the others. So Chris Jones has been working quite closely with his one in WA. We've had some really good conversations in Victoria, the NRMA, in New South Wales as well. So it's really going to be about what are we talking to them about, and is there an opportunity that we might be able to do something like we might be able to share facilities, we might be able to, leverage on the back of something that they're doing, they might be able to leverage on the back of something that we're doing, but get a level of cooperation because the majority of those RACs have now moved into full-blown businesses and sell products and do, everything from insurance to solar panels to, all sorts of stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's really about us then as still a very traditional user group being able to leverage with them about our users and how we might be able to potentially have some attachment to their membership. And what overall that will give us, I mean, the bigger membership that we have, or the more that we can talk about our connection into membership, the greater leverage we have with state governments, local governments. I'm not sure that we'll get greater leverage with the federal government because I think this is very much, as you and I have discussed, this is very much a ground up movement, not a top down movement here in Australia.
Absolutely.
And so I think where we aim is we get that state and local push through the memberships. And, Idle Off is actually a great example of that, because if that can lead us into a schools program and we're educating kids about EVs, and then you'll find people like the RACs and the ETUs, they'll like to sponsor that sort of stuff because they'd love to co-brand those sort of things. You also find that state governments like to get involved in that sort of stuff as well. So, and we come from the perspective of no particular bias in terms of branding or the issues that the EVC have. because the EVC come as a corporate membership
lobby group.
Yeah, exactly. And so I've already had discussions with a couple of groups who have openly said to me that they were discussing things with EVC, but then had to pull the pin because the EVC were sort of saying, well, that doesn't fit with one of our members, so actually we can't take that approach, even though it might be the right thing. So
Cool, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's the process at this stage.
Nice.
One last question for Chris, and then we'll thank him. And just in relation to overall AEVA communication, for all the meetings that we have, can we have the minutes typed up and distributed to, so the entire membership? I think it relates maybe to stuff we talk about in our state chairs meetings. Because do you get the meeting minutes? I don't tend to see any meeting minutes.
No. So there isn't, at this stage, we haven't been specifically taking minutes. I take my own minutes about the action items.
Yeah.
And obviously, as you know, we follow that up each meeting in terms of making sure that things are moving forward. There isn't minutes particularly of that. It's not that formalised at this point in time. We could certainly move to doing something of that if, you know, that was something that people were really keen to see.
Well, should we have like a national Zoom meeting on some sort of recurring basis?
Well, we do. So we've got the National Council meeting will be occurring probably, I think CJ said to me today, we were going to try and do it prior to the AGM.
Okay.
So now that's not an every member meeting. That's a national meeting of the council. So I think for most of the branches now, that's 3 members from their branch in the national council meeting. I think John, potentially an AEVA general meeting on a more regular basis now that we've all got this this web technology up and running, and people
we're all tech experts now. So.
Yeah, and people know where to click and where not to click. I think that's probably not a bad idea, and something that we could throw in into next year's calendar. There'll certainly be. Obviously, we've got the AGM in October, and there's an opportunity for everyone to get involved on the conference in November. So certainly for these next few months, there's plenty of communication floating around. So maybe we throw that idea into the next states meeting and consider having a secondary general meeting that people can attend. I mean, I don't know. People may not want to attend. I'm not sure, but we can give it. We can, give it.
It just doesn't hurt to have good communication within any body. So.
Yep. All
right. Thank you very much, mate. It's always a pleasure, and appreciate what you've delivered tonight. Thank you very much.
If I'll just say thanks to everyone for the support over the year. If anyone's got any questions, please feel free to send me a note at president@aeva.asn.au. I'll do my best to get back to all of them, because I know everyone's got questions. But if you've got any ideas, we are a very open organisation, very keen to talk to anyone. I've had various people get in touch from the different AGMs that I've presented at and talk about different ideas. So by all means, feel free to yell out if you've got some ideas similar to what Gary and Nathan have raised tonight.
All right. Thank you very much.
We're looking for ambassadors. So if you know someone who's got a profile and drives an EV, even better.
Drives an EV, has a YouTube channel.
Yeah, so he came up in the last meeting that I did. Yeah.
Also, I heard on the grapevine Gina Riley of Kath and Kim fame.
Yeah. No. Okay.
Got a Kona recently.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Thanks very much. We'll move on to the the president's, chairman's, conveyor's report. I'm going to keep it relatively brief, but just wanted to cover some of the stuff we've done in the last year. As a body, we've had some fantastic meetings, and obviously they were mostly at the end of last year and beginning of this year, and a couple since. But some fantastic speakers, and for the highlight for me was probably actually the first meeting I did with Nathan bringing his Model 3 and Tim bringing in his Cortina. That was actually pretty cool to have the old and the new next to us. And the last meeting where I got to interview Andrew Simpson, that was fantastic to speak to someone with such a depth of EV knowledge and experience. But I just wanted to rattle off a couple of things that we've done that have happened in the EV world over last year, because things are progressing, and I think it's important to maybe discuss that. But you know, Queensland got its second 350 kilowatt charger up at Coochin Creek, and the first EV Networks charger in Australia. I think they're up to 7 or 8 chargers now. So interesting that things seem to start in Queensland. I think ChargeFox might have even opened their first one in Queensland too, or maybe close to their first. Yes, Les?
It was Toombul, I think.
Turnbull, yeah, like it's really it's really good to see that Queensland has, especially the Brisbane area, has such a a dominance in the EV space for Australia at least. And I think we should keep that going. We had the Sydney Expo. That was a lot of fun. A lot of custom built cars there, and I had a lot of fun doing the ride sharing, where people randoms jumped in my car and I took them for a drive. But that was a fantastic experience, and that was good fun. Just even driving to Sydney from Brisbane, I thought it was really a really decent experience. So I get to travel with my son down there and just see what an EV can actually do, because we can talk all day about these 30-kilometre trips that people do on a daily basis, but I think once EVs start to be able to do 1,000 kilometres without any issue, then I think that's speaks volumes. I organised the Brisbane Bayside Cruise, where I didn't tell anyone where we're going to end up, and that was a bit of fun. I think I particularly enjoyed helping Graham with his Suzuki make it to the finish line, and Simone. And yeah, I think that was good fun. I enjoyed that day. And that we had the Leaf, the Ioniq, the new Ioniq, the Model 3, the Mercedes, possibly others all come out in the last year. And I think we're going to, from the stuff I watch online, we're only going to get more and more models in the next couple of years. It's just actually, these meetings are just going to be like a model a month or something like that. It's just going to be even more. So that's really it from me. Once we get back to the normal, we'll start to do a few more cruises and get-togethers and that sort of thing. But I'll hand over to Les now. Give us a bit of an update from the secretary point of view.
Alrighty. So for this one, we've seen our membership count actually go up, and we've got, I say approximately 166 because some of the members haven't actually renewed yet. So we send them emails, we're waiting to see if they renew. But so we're looking fairly healthy. So we're trying to see for the next year if we can get even more people to join. I think a lot of the stuff that's been happening in the news seems to be piquing people's interest. So they're coming to have a look. So I've been receiving a lot more contact by email or phone, especially in the last 2 months. So it hasn't been too bad. Lots of queries and people Sometimes government departments suggesting that they're going to be wanting to present things as they come up. So looking pretty promising. The other one is because of where I work, I know people in California, New Zealand, and bits and pieces of Europe. So they've been starting to send contacts. So sometimes people from Australia will accidentally contact people in other countries, and then they've been forwarding the contacts back to me so we can contact them, explain to them that they have an Australian association if they want to ask questions. So that's been pretty good. And the other one we've noticed is Facebook activity has really increased. So a lot more people have been joining the Queensland Facebook group, and yeah, our members are up like 700 people. So it's not bad. It's good to see people are interested in asking questions. So, yeah, that's all I had for that.
Okie doke. Simone, do you have a treasurer's report or anything to add?
Oh, wait a sec. Oh,
Yeah, I'll just wait for Les to change the slide.
yeah. You gotta wait.
That could take some time.
So I guess all in all, as I said probably earlier, if anyone heard me, because of coronavirus and distancing and the fact we've done a few meetings online, we really haven't spent a huge amount. We spent earlier in the year where we bought the pull-up banner and the teardrop flag for, you know, when we do expos and displays and whatever. We did spend a little bit of money early on where we had a stall at the, oh my goodness, the Science Association. Yeah. Anyway, so Gary spent the day there and talked to some people about electric cars, obviously, so that was cool. Other than that, we haven't really spent a lot of money, so we had a starting balance of $1,756.28. That was prior to getting our top up, and then we obviously spent money on flags and flyers and some brochures as well. But yeah, with a closing balance of $1,964.19, where the current balance is $1,736.69, and that's really just, most of it is just rent really coming out. We had to pay. We pay for the cupboard, obviously, at the hall as well, and that's really it. We haven't had, much out. There's a little bit of money still to be deposited from the last couple of meetings. I hadn't gotten to the bank yet. But yeah, really, that's it. There's not much more to tell as far as the financials is. Yeah, really, it's pretty.
Fortunately, Les and I didn't claim any of our audio-video equipment for the live streaming.
No, you didn't, and that's something we can certainly look at. So, talk to me, or I would like to pass
Les
that
is really
notion.
rich, so he doesn't need the money. So don't worry about it.
Les, I keep telling you, I'll give you my bank account details. There's no problem. No, so yeah, I mean, we're not bad. Like we're fairly well off for the year. And the train's just going past.
Are you at the hall?
Sorry?
Are you at the hall?
No, I live that close to the train line.
Oh, God. All right.
That's my other electric vehicle, see?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so other than that, there's not much really to tell because it's been, as everyone knows, it's not been that exciting. We couldn't even do snacks or anything. The last couple I've been able to go to, so...
yeah.
But yeah, hopefully we'll pick up again soon because it's... Even the one that we had that I could attend that we had live as well, I mean, was really popular. So I think people are eager to come back, but yeah, we'll just have to wait and see how we go. But as far as finances is, it's not too bad. And I guess nobody's flying to Melbourne this year anyway for the expo, so we don't have to think about any of that. So yeah. That's it really. That's my finances done. Quickest report ever.
Well, when we get back into it, we'll have to spend all that money on,
no problem,
on meetups and doing stuff. So
yeah, actually,
thank you very much.
And meetup wouldn't be a bad thing. I think the Sydney group used that quite successfully to get more and a different variety of people through, I guess.
Yeah.
So maybe we can look at things like that. So, but anyway, that's probably another discussion for another day.
Yeah, just on that point very quickly, I think it might be a long road back to normality from where we were. So if everyone can maybe, you know, we'll just have to see what we're allowed to do. I think the government just, you know, they've got their framework that they want us to stick to, and we'll just we'll go with small groups, and then they'll get bigger and bigger, and then we'll have events.
Look, I guess there'd be nothing wrong with like a 10 people drive day or something. I don't know. That's something that we can consider later on. Yeah, I mean, I think people are really, just on the COVID side, I think people are really hanging to do something more social again, because we've all been kind of isolated. And while this is fun, it's just not the same as standing there with a cup of tea in your hand and bullshitting to everyone else about, I mean, discussing your cars. Do you know what I mean? Like, so
we've got a comment that perhaps we could go upgrade to Moccona coffee instead of Blend 43 for when we do get back to meetings.
Yeah, look, I don't have a problem with that. As long
I think it'll be a spendathon. It's going to be a spendathon.
No, I don't mind that as long as I get the
Arnott's arrowroot.
Oh, okay. No, as long as I get the jars, I'm happy.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Well, somehow now we have to work out how to do a vote. All right. That looks to be squared away.
Yep. Excellent. Wonderful. So I think I got about 10 now.
If only there was a streamlined way of doing this.
I'll buy that next time.
Okay, I got a positive of 9 there.
Cool.
9 yeses, no nos. There are 6 new committee members.
Lovely.
Nice.
Round of applause.
Woo.
Clap.
Okay, so that is all the voting completed.
Thank goodness.
And then before we close this bit, did anybody have anything they wanted to bring up for the running of the club?
Suggestions for this next coming year?
Yeah, like things just specifically for the Queensland branch?
I guess there's 2 things that I would like to put forward here is feedback just generally from the floor on the sort of stuff that's getting presented. So the little bits that Mark and I are going to continue to do. If you don't like it, throw tomatoes. Otherwise, tell us what you'd like us to say more about. Similarly for John, what do you want to hear from John? Because I think one of the things that we find is, you know, we got to go and find inspiration of what to bring to the crew. But if you've got a little bit of a someone to bring forward some ideas, then that gives you a serving suggestion to go at. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, whilst I'm still kind of early in being in my involvement with the organisation, I do find the communication a little challenging. I did not know tonight was an AGM. My fault, but I didn't know that. I didn't know, and so, you know, and things like meeting minutes and so on, I think has been coming out in the conversations today as well. And communication solid, as John has said before, is a solid part of any good organisation. So there's just 2 bits of feedback that I wanted to say.
I think you're not in the Google group though, are you? Or haven't been?
I have not been. I have not been. So again, that's okay. It's on me. But I do think there's possibly an opportunity to work out maybe a better way than that, because I know from Mark's involvement in the Google group, it is a swamp of emails. That makes it very, very difficult to be around.
Yeah. I did edit the website. Oh, no, I had an event, but I didn't edit the actual page. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to get bogged down in this now, but I guess we could maybe have a conversation about differing levels of, you know, tech from people and how we incorporate like forum notifications, websites, WhatsApp, Facebook, committee meeting minutes, and everything else that goes with it. Maybe we can consolidate into something and maybe as a group we can agree on that. I think Graham's made a point about having regular committee meetings, and I know that's something we probably haven't had a great lot of lately. We were doing a couple there at one stage, but when everything stops sometimes. So I do plan now that, and tonight's a pretty good indication that we can all jump online one night a month or something and do this type of thing. I think there's no reason for us to have a committee meeting at the hall when we can do it like this. So I think in this next coming year, we'll definitely have regular committee meetings like this.
I'm happy. I think that's a good idea, just to set out what we want to do.
I think the reason that the 2018 Expo was so successful is because we actually met as a group of 15 or whatever people involved, and we actually got something done at every meeting. And I think that's what we're sort of missing at the moment, is that we're not, as a committee, getting a lot done because we're not getting together and communicating with the membership.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. But I don't think a lot of anything's happening at the moment. So, but maybe we can make bigger steps this year. So, all right. Do we want to wrap up there, or do we want to do the presentations? I was going to do a few things on EV infrastructure that's come up, and Nathan was going to give a chat.
Yeah. So we'll have to just close the AGM.
Close the AGM.
Yeah. And so this is the close of the AGM. So we've voted in the people. And yep, so we'll send out minutes.
You guys in the participants, are you happy to stay on for another maybe 45 minutes or something like that?
Probably another 15 for me.
Yep.
Yep, no, I'm good with that. Yep, no problem. Yep.
Yep. All right. At the end of, so I was going to do a quick presentation on just a few things that have changed since last meeting on the EV infrastructure side, and then Nathan was going to give a bit of a chat, but then we're going to open the floor to anyone who wants to speak. So ask free, like just have a free speak portion. So we might just kick it off now. Hey, let's go. So, looks like I've got 2 PowerPoints up. That's interesting. Okay, let's go this one. All right. Can everyone see that all right?
Yep, that's good.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So this month, I don't know. I mean, I know people who read my posts on Facebook and that type of thing. Is that Gary's mic by any chance?
Sorry?
Just pop yourself on mute, mate. Just getting some background noise. Thank you. So the Queensland government put out a tender for the QESH Stage 2 at the beginning of the year, and due to COVID, everything kind of got stalled. It was meant to be built by the middle of the year, and those sites actually continued to get built, but the exact locations in each town have been getting discovered rather than them being actually announced where they were. So in the last couple of weeks, they actually announced the QESH sites, and there were a couple of small changes. So Cardwell up here between Townsville and Tully, I believe it is, that was previously meant to be Ingham, and they've moved it to the next town up, which is a little bit closer to Tully, not too far away. And at IKEA North Lakes and IKEA Springwood, they're putting a charger in there as well. So that's a couple of little gifts that we weren't necessarily expecting, because that wasn't on the tender. So when you take all of the charges that have been announced and overlay them onto the map on the screen, you'll have just almost a straight line of blue dots on that map. So if you go and check out the Quesh website, Eureka Quesh website, you can actually have a look on their map, and it's probably a bit more user-friendly than, well, actually I could probably, just give me 1 second, share screen. Yeah, is that working?
Yeah, that's good, John.
Okay, I mean, a lot of you will be familiar with Plugshare, but here's the North Lakes one. This continues on to what I was going to say anyway, but they're putting in, EV Networks are putting in one at Bundamba, down near the, I think it's at the Puma, and up on the Sunshine Coast. This Forest Glen one was announced quite a long time ago, and it was on Plugshare, but no one seemed to know anything about it. It kind of got leaked about 2 months ago, but it has since been confirmed as a location, and EV Networks have put in this one at the Coles, and here's a picture here, right next to the Coles, like 2 prime spots for when you go shopping. So if we get EV chargers popping up at the supermarkets, that'll be bloody fantastic if that happens all over the state.
Certainly a high profile one, that one.
Yeah. So that's really good.
Sorry, where was that one again? Oh, Budrum.
Budrum, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
But if I zoom out a little bit, one thing you will notice is that there's not much inland. So over the next year, I wouldn't mind actually speaking to the powers that be after the election, no doubt, and maybe pushing for some of the spires that come out from the coast to get a bit more, even if it's just one every 200 kilometres from the coast or something like that. Just allows EVs to get inland a little bit and spread out. That is, I think that's about it from me, just for the infrastructure, but I thought that was quite, I'll just check. Yep, that's it, just the Quesh stuff and the Budrum and the Bundamba. So over to Nathan now.
Exciting times. Thanks, mate. No, it's good to see that extra stuff. I'm not sure how much more budget's going to be put into that sort of stuff. I certainly hope there is opportunity for it in the next little while. Just going to get myself set up here. 1 second, team. So
just while you're doing that, Nathan, Graham, shout out to Graham and Mitch from DC Electrical putting in a charger up in the Cairns Hotel. Did you want to have a quick word about that, Graham?
Yeah, sure. That was a project we worked on for quite a while. We're trying to get something up there that will bear the AEVA sign as well. That's yet to go onto a pole behind the charging outlets. But the first step was to get the solar put on that place. So we had 100 kilowatts to start with, and so we put another 130 kilowatts of solar on top of the roofs up there, and then added the 2 car parking bays with a Type 1 and a Type 2 outlet, as well as 3-phase outlets and 15 amp outlets. And that's all on a bollard that's made out of recycled plastic. So that was a bit of a success story. And within 30 minutes, they actually had a booking from an owner with a Kona. They booked specifically because there was EV charging on site, So they're actually 6 kilowatt chargers, I believe, because it's hooked up to 3-phase. The second thing I want to talk about is that we're currently doing a bit of a deal trying to get solar onto the roof of the Albion Peace Centre, and we have a member who's offered to chip in quite a large sum of money for that one, and get solar on that Albion P Centre. At the same time, I was gifted a Tesla 6 kilowatt wall outlet, and Mitch from DC has offered to install that free of charge, and so we've got the Albion P Centre is going to have a 6 kilowatt Tesla chargers on legacy mode, so we can charge other cars on that as long as they've got the Type 2 plug.
It should go quicker than 6 if you should go quicker than 6.
Okay, Mitch.
Depends what you feed it with.
Yeah, Mitch, come on in. Tell me about this. Tell everybody about this charge and what it can do. Hello, he's not there. Anyway, that was gifted to us, you know. So I mean, it's in a way everything's been gifted to us to put towards the Albion P Centre. So it means they won't have a power bill. We'll have free charging. You know, so it's sort of like a win all around.
Wonderful.
Mitch has got no mic, so you'll have to wait. Maybe next week you can have a chat. So he said looking to install as a 22 kilowatt supply, so roughly 120k per hour charge.
Oh, okay. Well, that's better than I would have thought, but okay, yeah.
It'll be the car that won't be able to meet it rather than the charger being able to put something out there. That's great.
Yeah. So
three-phase 32 amp, I think.
Yep, that's right.
Cool. Yeah, there you go. Thanks.
There you go. What would I know about chargers? Bugger all, obviously.
Well, the amount of front line about it, you should know something.
Anyway, so I think
Nathan's turn.
Yeah,
that's right. If Graham's got something else he wanted to add, that's fine.
I'm just thinking these are sort of success stories, and if everybody sort of got on and tried to do their little bit and put a charger in here and charger in there. Now, it doesn't have to be a DC 50 kilowatt or 350 kilowatt charger. Yeah. It can be as simple as these things. But you know what? It's just putting another charge option out there. And at 22 kilowatts, you know, that's not slow either. That's pretty good.
Faster than my car can charge.
Yeah.
Yep.
Future-proofing.
Awesome. Right, guys, as we said we would do before and we'll continue to do, want to give a bit of a market update, take load off John and the team and continue to bring forward some of the stuff that we come across. I'm not sure, I'll just quickly flick through this. Last month, we sort of gave a bit of an intro. So Mark and myself are part of a small consultancy where we particularly focus on fuels and the economics and environmental impact around them, which basically reduce emissions. We do a lot of work with governments, full governments. Most of our customers are governments. We work in all sorts of facets, and we heavily engage with pretty much the whole entire ecosystem of EVs, and more so on a daily basis. And so, because we work in this space and we continue to do this sort of stuff on a daily basis, we thought we'd bring some of this forward. So today I'm going to focus on a little bit about what's selling out there and ways that some vehicles are selling, and then I'm going to do a tiny deep dive into heavy vehicles, because it's something we do a lot of work in, probably not something we talk about a lot, but it's actually a massive part of the overall EV world. So starting with some sales, I picked up this piece from The Driven, which is, you know, to be honest, sometimes you need to read it and you need to be sure what it's being said, because sometimes it's a bit dodgy. But this piece I've checked over, and you know, EVs are soaring, and in this COVID environment, we've seen a massive decline in the amount of ICE vehicles being sold in general in the overall market here in Australia. Whilst we are going to see a drop in the amount of EVs sold this year, likely compared to last year. Last year we saw about 6,500 sold in Australia. This year the estimate is probably around the 4,000 mark. But when you have a look at it compared to the rest of the market, EVs are still soaring. And you can see there what's selling. And you know, the establishment of the Hyundai product and the Leaf coming out is really starting to, you know, take some hold. And then clearly Model 3 has captured the market. I was driving around today and I saw 3 in one very small setting here in Brisbane by the Bayside. I live over near Wynnum Manly area, and there were 3 in one spot, and then I was in the 4th one. So they're certainly getting out there and having engaged with the Tesla team in the last week or so. September is set for a large number of deliveries. I know that 20 delivered on Monday in Brisbane, and more than that on every day since, and for the rest of this week and next. So lots and lots of vehicles getting on the road, which is wonderful to see, and that only drives those people who will end up wanting to be AEVA members, which is awesome. There aren't really that many new vehicles coming out at the moment in Australia, and to be honest, I think they're actually going to be a bit of a stall on that for a time. There are new vehicles popping up all over the world, but we're not going to see them. We're not going to see things like the E208 or the E-Corsa. It's just not going to come to Australia anytime soon. The Honda E, which is one of my personal favourites, it's just not going to come. There is too much demand in Europe, and there is not enough reason to be here in Australia, as we've seen with Zoe being pulled recently as well. So we've just got to fight for what we can get. We've got to rattle the cage and make as much noise as we can, and ensure that there is demand for the vehicles that are provided, so that will then bring more models to the market. So thinking about how vehicles are being sold, there has been a new model, and when I say model, I mean sales model, being launched this month from AGL, the energy company. They have started offering leases of EVs. Those EVs are being leased at a very flexible arrangement, a no lock-in term. By no means is this cheap. Flexible, but it's certainly not cheap. And I'll be interested to see its success. But it's certainly, a bit of a departure into an area of the market that AGL has done before. So for those who are keen and been out there before, the Kangoo was launched in Australia via AGL, via a method that's very similar to this only. It didn't do very well, and it's probably because it's maybe not the best way to sell a commercial vehicle. But this could work for some people. It could work for some businesses. Prerequisite is to be an energy customer of AGL, so sort of gets you in the door, and then you can then get on board with this offer. The
Excuse
offer,
me, Nathan.
Yes, mate, please.
The Kona 359 a week and the Model 3. Which version of the Model 3? Surely
from my
not the standard
understanding,
range plus that one.
my understanding, it's an SR Plus. Yes.
But they're like literally the same price.
Yeah, that doesn't mean so. Just because they're the same, you said that. I didn't say that. Excellent. As they might be the same price, there's lots of things behind that. So I can imagine your insurance bill is smaller than mine.
Yep.
Whilst your servicing bill is bigger than mine, because I've done that piece of work. And there's lots of other little bits and pieces that will come into there. And I would also say most folks price at a market-based price, not necessarily at a dollars plus price. They think they can get people to buy a Model 3 for $600 a week. They'll charge them $600. And whether that's right or wrong, it's up to them and their commercial model. But that is one of the things that I picked to be a bit strange. I would say that the Ioniq should be cheaper, maybe by $30-40 than a Leaf. There's also how they're buying these vehicles. So it may be the case that with Hyundai and Nissan that they're getting a fleet discount because they're all buddy, and no one gets a fleet discount on
I think they indicated, didn't they, Nathan, that they're not necessarily brand new cars. So
that's also possible.
Could be demos or factory cars.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's even secondhand cars. There are secondhand Leafs and Ioniqs out there at the moment.
In the Tesla case, it'd certainly be a new Tesla.
Yeah, almost certainly. Or if they were going to buy a secondhand Tesla, they'd be paying new money for it. So it's an interesting space. But look, one of the things I did want to bring up, I want to say that this is out there. I'm brand agnostic. I'm product agnostic, but I do like to find value for people. And leasing isn't necessarily everybody's cup of tea, but for those people who there is another product out there called evlease.com.au. They offer exactly the same product, except for it's a 4-year term on a vehicle. And it's about 55% less than this.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty big number. The Model 3 number is $1,099 a month.
Yeah.
So versus what it works out to be here is just on $2,500 a month. So if leasing works for you, and it's not very popular here in Australia, massively popular in the US, quite popular in Europe, particularly the UK, not so popular in Australia, but some businesses can find a tax benefit from this. There are models out there, and the guys at EV Lease have done some pro bono work with them and help them to get their world on fire. And so they are an interesting option if you're interested in that side of things.
It's always struck me, Nathan, with leasing and like that popularity in the overseas markets, the depreciation on EVs, because in the past they've had savage depreciation, that seemed to, tip the balance way towards lease for the overseas markets. Would that be a fair assumption? Or?
Yeah, look, I mean, most leases would bake in the depreciation. The difference with EV Lease and the way their model is that they are going to continue to own the vehicle for pretty much its entire life, at least 12 years. And so they might lease it to you for the first 4 years. Then they'll lease it to me as a second-hand car for the second 4 years. And then they'll lease it to my, nephew for the third 4 years. And obviously the price will come down over time, and the model offer is different. They will guarantee the battery. They will take care of the servicing throughout. They will make sure the vehicle is safe. So it's a completely different model. It's actually quite similar to some of the European offers. But there's the that fixes the depreciation problem, because at the moment, if you go to a normal leasing company and say, hey, can I lease an EV? They will say, yep, no problems. I'm assuming that it will be worth 40% of its original value in 4 years' time, which we all know is not going to be true, but they won't underwrite it any better than that.
Okay.
But that actually opens up an opportunity if you get the opportunity to buy the EV after the depreciation point, because
possibly
they'll be like, well, that's what happens with, maybe not in this example, but other examples where they say, well, we've written off 60% of the value in 4 years.
Doesn't mean they sell it for that number.
No, that's right. But if you get the opportunity to buy it, you can buy it off them for the 60% depreciated price.
Doesn't usually work like that. They will take the profit on whatever you'll pay versus their depreciated value. So they go to market, or they'll go to auction, and they can sell it for a 40% depreciated value. Although they've written it down for 60, they're going to make the 20 as a profit.
Don't you sometimes get the option to buy at the end of a lease?
Some leases, not so much in Australia. That's more on a typical, like a balloon payment loan rather than a true lease. A lease is different in that it includes not only the capital, but also the full running costs and things like insurance, and in this case, charges and so on as well.
When they've done salary sacrifice through work, that's what a few people have said. They get the opportunity to buy it afterwards. And I was thinking, well, there's an opportunity with EVs because they're going to get depreciated on paper at the rate of an ICE vehicle. They're not going to have that same amount of depreciation, and therefore they're going to be worth more than what you've claimed on your tax
every so possible,
benefit.
Ever so possible.
And then you make a chunk of change at the end.
That's possible. Salary sacrifice is a whole nother bag. I'm more than happy to go through that and why it doesn't work on EVs, unless you're a very, very high-income individual. But it's certainly in that scenario where you can buy your own vehicle back. It's kind of like putting some money away for the future, and then you get your bank account later. You get your windfall day in the future. So look, there are different ways to buy vehicles. I'm not giving any advice as to which one's right or wrong, just that there's two lease versions here, and one's far cheaper than the other. So, and if that's something you want to hear more about, I'm more than happy to keep delving into that. And then trucks. I wanted to do a bit of a deep dive on trucks. I know that we've talked a little bit about the other modes of vehicles, and this is probably more to understand the market that's out there and what's possible. And in your advocacy that you talk about EVs, you can say, oh, there's trucks too, and I think that's part of the driver for having this conversation tonight. So we're going to have a little look at why do we need to go EV on trucks. It's a bit similar to cars, but it's actually a few other elements to it. when do they make sense? You know, people might think, oh, it's not going to work until, you know, Elon brings out that big, beautiful blue beast that's there. Actually, there's plenty of opportunity now. And what is available? And then finally, you know, does it make sense? Because you can put some amazing stuff out there and no one's going to buy it because it doesn't make any sense. We'll just quickly explore that. So this is a chart that we use at Movement, which gives you a bit of a concept of the growth of transport emissions. This is working on a base of 2005, which is a reference point for the Paris Climate Agreement, as being 0%. And then you can see that basically cars have plateaued over time. We've had, whilst cars numbers have grown and, you know, populations have grown and so on, we've had efficiencies out of your typical ICE vehicles over the time, which has, you know, kept it fairly stable, even though there is the SUV challenge. And up until recent numbers, it's broadly about stable. But what you're seeing here in trucks and light commercial vehicles is a very long trajectory, and there's nothing that's particularly going to stop that anytime soon. And so there is a suite of things that needs to happen to arrest the rate of growth in transport emissions. And
sorry, Nathan, sorry to interrupt. Is there anything to say why they're getting dirtier? Are they just getting bigger motors, pulling bigger loads?
No. This is the total amount of emissions of all vehicles on the road. So the why, that's really good. So let's just take trucks for a second. We've got the light commercial vehicles. You know, I'll pause on that. 50% of the vehicles that are sold at the moment are basically light commercial vehicles in Australia. So every Hilux that goes out there, it's adding to it. So there's a volume thing. There are more of them. And then they do it, and this is based on, you know, how many are there, how many kilometers do they do, and what fuel consumption do they have. This drives these lines of emissions, carbon emissions. And with our trucks, what you're seeing here is just a growth in trucks, growth in needs. I mean, you think about Amazon, all of a sudden, we're going to have a lot more being delivered. We've got a population that generally is growing. We've got consumption that's generally growing, and we are often buying things further afield. So all of these things lead to an increase. They are the reasons for an increase in emissions over time for the transport environment. And what it means is businesses, if we just allow things to be as they are, we will have you know, a continued growth in the transport emissions to the point where before long, as is already the case in Tasmania and in Canberra, in the ACT, that emissions becomes the highest single sector of contributor to a state or a region, and eventually the country's emissions. Transport will be the biggest contributor to emissions in time. And then, so we've also got these commitments. We've signed up to the Paris Agreement. We haven't done a Trump yet and gotten out. And we have a commitment to overall reduce our emissions against the 2005 value by 26%, which is, you know, a long way, particularly when you've got a trajectory. Now, that commitment is across the whole entire emissions account for the country. But if you just took this particular part of the emissions contributors and you said you've got to do your part as well, the reality is, as it stands today, it's not going to be helping but hindering the challenge. So EVs fit in that space. EVs can be renewably fueled. Even when they're not, they're about 50% better than what a diesel vehicle will be delivering on our calculations. And you've also then beyond that got the displacement of every litre of oil also displaces litres of oil that shipped that litre of oil to where you picked it up from. So there's a compound effect of putting EVs on the road. And then finally, there's the tailpipe element, which a new paper that we have written recently will be published in the next 3 or 4 weeks, which details just how bad that is. So this is why we need to do something, and EVs have a place in here, as do other fuels. And there's an organisation called NACFE, North American Council of Freight Efficiency, and they're a peak body on trucks. and reducing emissions from trucks and being more efficient, basically moving more stuff with every kilowatt of energy. And their study has come out to say that looking at 4 different types of technologies, there are different sweet spots for where trucks lie. And they say that, a battery electric truck fits down in the lighter vehicles, and the shorter ranges is where its sweet spot lies, as opposed to some of the other areas like fuel cell, which is about the longer drives and the larger loads. So from that read, fuel cells might have a place in large rigs, and in our case, things like road trains, but are unlikely to be competitive in a 4 to 8 ton truck that delivers your parcels or something like that. Any questions on that particular sweet spot piece? There's certainly a debate that's come around this last week around whether commercial battery vehicles will make their way up into this top space where they're going to have heavier vehicles and longer range. Certainly Elon has said that that's where it's at. But Bill Gates has come out this week and said that he feels it's renewable liquid fuels and gaseous fuels that are going to be the provider of that top end heavy long distance work.
I think we quite often discount hybrids, but in my mind, not knowing that much about trucks in general and just guessing the future, I would have thought the talk of electric off the line with the backup of hydrogen or something like that for the long distance may be the preference for trucks in the future. But whether or not that makes the price point of a truck exorbitant, and who knows? Maybe the hybrid.
The balance will come out. I mean, hybrid here, what they're looking at is a hybrid diesel in that particular example, or a hybrid renewable fueled vehicle. A bit Prius-y. If you think Prius, think that sort of thing. It has a place. I'd probably say that it actually comes down a little bit further. But this is these are a bunch of guys that we work with internationally, and they've got their position, and there's a whole paper behind this. This is grabbed from a big paper. There is definitely a concept of putting the right vehicle in the right job to get the best result. You can buy a hybrid small truck today in the right application. You'll save 20 to 25% of your fuel. So what can you buy today? So there are electric vehicles, electric trucks on the road today. The majority of them are made by a company called SEA Electric. They have built a modular motor, battery and power system technology platform. And that's really kicked off not only in Australia, but also New Zealand going absolute gangbusters because of the support the New Zealand government provides. They've expanded to the US and to Europe, and they're doing very, very well globally. But if we focus on Australia, they've put out around 100 vehicles in market and have hundreds more on order. They're built in Melbourne. They take a diesel truck and they strip out the powertrain, and then they put in their electric powertrain based on the requirements for the vehicle. All of their vehicles aim to do somewhere around the 250 Ks for a charge. But as you can tell from the types of vehicles you can see here, whether it be the service equipment type vehicles, there's also service body trucks, but this is a cherry picker, or the refuse vehicles, there's a lot of parasitic energy. There's energy doing other work other than driving for PTOs, and which is basically using hydraulics to drive these, whether it's crushing garbage or it's moving this nifty lift arm around. That energy is being drawn from the battery, just like the energy would be drawn from the diesel motor if it was on a PTO on a typical truck. So this is happening now. This IKEA vehicle is actually in Queensland. This is APT in Queensland, based down in Logan, All Purpose Transport, and they have one at this stage, and they have the contract to deliver IKEA's stuff. And IKEA have globally said that every single delivery must be delivered by an electric vehicle by 2025. And he's in the process of making his whole entire 14 vehicle fleet electric. Well, this is the first one. So it's happening, and it's happening with Australian built vehicles.
Simone said she got very excited when she saw that this morning.
Yeah. Oh, wicked. Good to hear.
That's very good. It's just these small things that chip away at, you know, the ICE vehicles over time, and then all of a sudden everything's electric.
And they prove capability at the moment. I think that's the thing. People go, oh, that'll never work. And actually, you know, these guys here in their urban delivery IKEA, the range is absolutely fine. The dwell time for charging is absolutely fine.
What is the range, Nathan?
So that vehicle's a 200 to 250 K vehicle, and their typical days are in the high hundreds. You know, for that at the moment, they've got, as I said, they've got 14 vehicles, so they can modify the run. They can put that on the close base run as it stands right now for a bit more confidence. But we've given them some advice over the time to sort of think about how they can do best to stretch their legs and have a bit more confidence over time. And so that's pretty cool. And you're seeing a lot more councils taking this on as well. So you've got these council tippers. There's also council tray trucks. You know, garbage, hard garbage collection. So you think about, you know, stuff out on the curb and people come around and nick it. That sort of garbage collection. Also refuse, you know, your typical, this is a side lifter, which would pick up your garbage out front of your house, but there's also rear lifters, which, or rear access, which is for things like, you know, your parks and gardens, garbage, you know, your garbage bins at your barbecues at parks or gardens that aren't being used very much at the moment, but trucks that would go around and do a bit of a milk run every day and do one part of the municipality on one day and a different part on the next. Those are fantastic deployments for trucks because they do a lot of stop-start. Anywhere where there's a lot of stop-start, there's a lot of regen. When I say stop-start, I mean stopping and starting throughout the vehicle profile. So urban delivery, lots of deliveries in a day. There's a great opportunity for regen. If you're cruising along at 100 k's an hour all the time, it's not the ideal spot for an EV at this stage.
Low speed for garbage trucks as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Low speed, the better. So
a typical garbage truck of that nature there, that Cleanaway, that will use 100 litres per 100 kilometres. It's a litre a kilometre of activity. That is the typical usage for a garbage truck. So if you can and that's the highest, basically the highest usage of any trucks that are on the road.
100 litres per 100.
100 litres per 100 k's. And very common. And so if you can displace that many litres by putting some electricity in there and making it happen, there is a lot to be gained in emissions, but also in just, you know, general fuel use and cost. The e-Canter is coming from Fuso. It's got a very poor range. It's only about 120 k's. It will be very good for specific in-town kind of deliveries or suburban, urban deliveries. But at this stage, they just don't have the range battery capacity to compete with SEA. SEA are still going to continue to own the market in Australia for some time.
That sort of range, Nathan, it might nearly work for the supermarket delivery jobs, like Woolies and Coles and whatever.
Absolutely. And so there is options to that. They've trialled that vehicle with Australia Post. They've trialled that vehicle with Toll. Woolies already have a number of these vehicles, and they also have some larger inter-store delivery vehicles as well. They are, you know, twin axle, 16, 17, 18 ton sized vehicles that they have for delivery that are made by SEA. So you're starting to see those organisations come about. It'll only kick off over time. So the thing is, with fleets, it's got to work financially. No one's just going to be a charity and go and put on EVs because it's fun. It's got to make sense. And so the benefit that we know from EVs is they pay back over time. And so it's great that fleets are generally quite attuned to total cost of ownership. And so if they sit down and study it, they can start to make a business case. So when we consider that business case, all these e-trucks are about 100 grand, 120 grand, that ballpark, more than their ICE equivalent. So at the top end with your garbage truck, it's about 100 to 120 grand more than a normal garbage truck. However, we know that the running costs are far less, and then a good example is on a garbage truck. It's about 6 times less often that you have to change the brakes. Now, you think of the brakes on one of those big trucks and how much money that costs. It doesn't take long for it to stack up quite well. And it typically, with the assessments we've done for different organisations, it's about 7 years where a truck is doing typical operations. It can become more challenging in situations where, say for instance, councils don't do a lot of kilometres a year on a given vehicle, and so there's it takes a lot longer because you've got to pay back the energy and the servicing costs over a longer period of time. Whereas something that's doing, let's say, 35,000 k's a year in a typical operation, you'll see a payback in around that 7-year mark. As I mentioned before, even on grid power, these vehicles will emit about 50% less than on diesel, and there's no tailpipe nasties, which is a significant issue on modern day trucks. Even the cleanest, Euro 5s and getting on for Euro 6s, they still emit a reasonable amount of stuff out of the tailpipe, which we all get to breathe in. Those applications, as I mentioned before, where there's a low distance travelled or low energy use, are unlikely to pay back at this point in time. As prices come down and parity comes about and all that sort of stuff, or starts to move towards it, surely that'll be fine. But if you're doing, a small amount of kilometres or a small amount of energy per year, you're not going to get the payback of that 100k or thereabouts more. And assessments that we've done for organisations is that 18% of new truck sales in Australia are in a sweet spot that would work, that could go EV with the vehicles that we've shown you tonight. So there is a massive opportunity. Now at this stage, they're not breaking about 0.3% market share, 0.5% market share. So there's a massive opportunity. There's a massive market. I said the same thing for cars, the EV ready to go is, way up over certainly 50%. But in this trucks, your application is important, the energy you use is important. But there's a solid number of vehicles with the technology we have today, which isn't groundbreaking and super duper. That will only improve in time as well. So if you know anybody who does trucks, and particularly those light trucks up to about 16 tonne, even up to about 24 tonne with the garbage truck, there is a case to be had about going EV. I know time is where it's at, so we all want to go to bed, I'm sure. I just wanted to sort of, haul out again what you'd like to hear. And I think this is also for John as well. And, I love this feedback as to what you want to hear about. We propose, we propose to give market updates on vehicles, on charging with John's assistance, on what news is coming out and what sales is going on. Over the course of every month that we'll come forward with something, and then a bit of a deep dive on a something. And again, what those deep dive topics are is what you might like to hear about. Tonight we've sort of done trucks. We're doing a load of work personally in buses at the moment, so that might be something we can do in the future. Or we can talk a little bit about some of those technologies, including hydrogen, if that's something that we want to hear about.
Nathan, I might ask you just a couple of questions, and then we'll probably wrap it up and then go to open questions for everyone.
Absolutely.
I think I saw announced this week that GM paired with Nikola, and they were legitimizing the Nikola brand, and they had a truck. Is that a bit of vaporware, or what's your opinion on that?
My opinion
it's probably early days and only speculation, but
my opinion is it's utter vaporware. Approach with caution.
Strange for GM to back a company like that.
It's got a lot of hype. I personally suspect what will happen is GM will have a range of electric vehicles which will be called Nikola, and Nikola as a company won't exist anymore. But look, there's lots of reading online about that topic. let people go reading.
Okay.
But I do think that what it shows is there's large manufacturers who need to grapple their way into the EV space, and they're all doing it in slightly different ways. Volkswagen are making stuff, Ford are buying it from them. You've got GM who are partnering with people. You've got Volvo who are doing it themselves. You know, there's all these sorts of different ways of looking at it, and it's going to be a fascinating space. I've got my popcorn ready.
Yep. I think we had a comment from Jeff saying, and he told me this at the previous meeting, that he was getting the first privately owned Mini.
Wonderful.
And
Wonderful.
If we ever get back to regular in the hall meetings, Jeff, I would love you to bring that along. So maybe we could get some info about that. And actually, maybe we'll get Jeff to present that one. But the MG ZS EV, that must be close. Is it? I think it said fourth quarter, which is.
To my understanding, it's been delayed. They've got they're trotting out the COVID excuse. But I suspect it might be early next year.
Okay.
The first edition is coming, and it will be great to see in the flesh.
Any idea, because they've said 47,000 for the pre-orders, how much the regular price is going to be?
I think it's going to be less. I think it's less than $47,000. I think my numbers are 42 or 3.
Everything I've seen said 46,990 for the pre-order.
Okay.
And there's a drive-away price too.
And that's for the early, and then it'll go up from there. So.
But the drive-away price thing is also a bit weird because every state is different, and I would not want to be paying the same drive-away price in Canberra as I would be in
Wales. But I
Mm.
absolutely hate when they don't tell you the drive-away price. Like, it's just so frustrating to see. It might, someone in your profession might be okay, but I'd just like to know 70,000, 70,000, or 46,000, 46,000.
I think that's probably fair. I think when you see that in advertising, that's one thing. But when you actually go and transact at the dealer will always try and sting you for a whole bunch more. Yeah. So your drive-away price on the ticket on the marketing is never the same thing that you pay anyway. But that's a fair point. In the UK, what happened with the MG ZS is that the initial vehicle was about £1,500, maybe £1,000 less than it was afterwards, and then afterwards it went up. So, which is a bit odd because usually, it's the other
I would
way
figure
around.
it's going to be 48 or 49,000.
I would say that vehicle probably needs to not be that much money if they actually want to sell some, and they probably need to keep a pricing that's about where it was launched at or better.
But that's still that's still the cheapest.
Yeah.
By $5,000 at least, even if it's at 49,000. So.
Yeah, maybe. Depends.
What's
on
the
what
Ionic? 54.
Oh.
I mean, we're talking rough numbers. Like,
yep.
You can obviously do a deal and get it a bit cheaper here and there, but
you can. The MG ZS is going to be good, but it should be cheaper because it's cheaper in every other market.
Yeah, and it's got less range and stuff than some.
And it's got a very high consumption as well. It'll do 180 watt hours per kilometre.
Yeah. All right. Is there any other questions, or are we happy just to do free for all questions? Everyone can unmute if they like, and we'll have a chat. Otherwise, if no one's got anything, we can think about wrapping up. Anyone got anything to say?
I was just going to say that I can do a little bit of a review on the Mini next meeting if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great actually, because it's probably not a car that a lot of people are going to get to see. It's not certainly this early anyway.
Yeah, well, it was meant to come out in July, but they did the COVID excuse as well, and so this is the first one. So
wonderful.
They got a little ceremony on Tuesday and things like that. So yeah.
What dealer did you buy it through, Jeff?
Brisbane Mini Garage.
Brisbane. Yep.
How was your experience, Jeff?
Awesome. Absolutely great. Yeah.
Were you happy with how was the sales consultant, Jeff? Did they know as much as you know, or?
I'd been researching it for a year, so
Yeah.
I knew a little bit more. But I say to their credit, I rang them up in January and they said, we actually don't know if we're getting it yet. And I said, well, I just saw the thing from BMW. The CEO said, yeah, 80 are coming out to Australia. So I said, okay, check. And he went away. And in half an hour, called back and says, I've made all the calls all the way around to the head office and everything. Yep, we're getting it, and we can order you one. And then
Wonderful.
they kept me up in the loop as to where it was and how, where it's going and when my car was made, and it's on the way. All that sort of stuff.
What cells does it run, Jeff?
Is it CAT-L?
CATL.
Yeah. So it's a
Chinese one, but that's good.
Yeah.
They're the biggest producer of batteries in the world at the moment.
Yeah,
right.
It's not got a very big battery, but it's actually one of the most efficient cars out there. So
it's basically, isn't it basically the i3 powertrain?
It's the i3S, the smaller i3S equivalent, like they call it 94 amp hours, or it's
it's the same as what I've got. Yeah.
But because it's such a small car, such small frontal area, it gets about 128 watt hours per kilometre on the freeway doing 100 kilometres an hour. So it for what it's got, it does pretty well. So, and the other thing is it's light and fast and goes around corners. Yeah. And that's what I liked about it, because I took one. Well, they had one out for a test drive, and it's just so much fun. But anyway, I'll report about it next to me.
Yeah, no, that'd be good. Yeah, look forward to it.
Wonderful. All right. Anyone else got any questions? Anything to say? Feel free to jump in.
We've gone quiet.
Simone said to Jeff that she's never been in a car that doesn't go around corners. So,
has anybody got any requests for things that to be talked about, topics or presentations, thoughts?
Well, I think, Nathan, like we touched on lease opportunities before, whether it's a company EV lease or, just how well it works in Australia. I suppose that's something that might be for future, alternatives to outright purchase or whatever,
It's a challenge. I can certainly have a look at it. It's a bit of a challenge because you've got to be careful about, giving financial advice, but certainly some generic thoughts on the area. Yep, cool.
All right. Well, very good. We've been going for 2 hours. I think if we're all done and dusted now and everyone's happy, then might call it a night.
Wonderful.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Gary, if you want to hang around, I'll have a chat to you about your tech stuff.
Okay.
Talk tech with JDIT.
Oh, I tried it on my phone before. You got to touch the dots and then choose chat, I think.
Oh, look, Les with the IT. All right. Thank you, everyone. I'll keep you informed. We'll have some more committee meetings more frequently this year, and hopefully when COVID wraps up, we'll get out for a cruise. Thank you and good night.
Yes, guys.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.